The call came at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, right as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. It was my son, Derek, and his voice had that tight, clipped sound I'd come to recognize over the ARS, the one he used when he wanted something and didn't want to waste time pretending otherwise. Dad, we need to talk. It's about Mom's old house in Florida. I set the pot down. My wife, Margaret, had passed 3 years ago, and that little beach bungalow was the last place we'd been truly happy. Derek knew that. What about it? I've got a client, a real big shot, who's looking for a retirement property in that exact neighborhood. He's offering $350, cash. You're not using the place, Dad. It's just sitting there, costing you taxes and upkeep. I can make this happen by the end of the month. I took a breath, watching the steam curl from my mug. Derek, I told you last year. That house stays in the family. Your mother and I bought it with our own savings, back when we couldn't afford the down payment on a CAR. I'm not selling it. Silence. Then the sigh, the long, put upon exhale I'd heard since he was 15 years old. Dad, you're 72. You don't need 2 houses. You don't need a lot of things. You need to think about the future. My future. S.A. Ross' future. The kids are growing up, and we're still crammed into that 3-bedroom in Arlington. I'm trying to provide for my family, and you're standing in the way. I felt the old weight settle on my chest. It wasn't the first time he'd brought up the house, or the little investment accounts I'd set up, or the old pickup truck I kept in the garage. Every conversation circled back to what I had and what he didn't. Derek, I said slowly, I'm your father, not a bank. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. Yeah, well, you've sure acted like one. The way you've been holding on to everything, it's like you don't trust me. Like you think I'm just waiting for you to kick the bucket so I can cash in. I flinched. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I see the way you look at me when I ask for help. Like I'm a stranger. Like I'm not your only son. The line went dead before I could answer. I sat there for a long while, coffee growing cold in my hands. I thought about the Christmas mornings when Derek was small, the way he'd run to the tree and tear into wrapping paper like every box held treasure. I thought about the college tuition I'd paid, the down payment I'd given him when he got my ride, the $20,000 I'd handed over when his business hit a rough patch 3 years ago. I never asked for it back. I never expected it back. But somewhere along the way, the love had turned into a ledger. Every visit felt like an audit. Every phone call felt like a request for withdrawal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my recliner and watched the late-night news, some story about a lottery winner whose kids sued him for the winnings before his body was cold. I used to watch those stories and feel sorry for the old man. Now, I felt like I was looking in a mirror. I made a decision at 2:14 in the morning. I pulled out the thick folder from my office cabinet, the one with all my financial statements, property deeds, insurance policies, and investment portfolios. There was a little over $900,000 in liquid assets, plus the house I lived in, the Florida bungalow, and my pension. Not a fortune by Silicon Valley standards, but enough to make a man's heirs start licking their chops. I called my attorney, Ed Morrison, at 8 o'clock sharp. Ed, I need to do something. It might sound crazy, but hear me out. Ed was a good man, 78 years old, with a limp from a war I couldn't remember the name of. He'd handled my will for 20 years, and he never blinked at anything I said. I want to fake losing it all, I told him. I need you to help me set up a scenario where I make it look like I've blown every dime on a bad investment. A sure-thing retirement fund that went belly up. I want it to be believable. I want Derek to think I'm dead broke. Ed was quiet for a moment. Then he said, you know what you're asking? You're asking your son to show you who he really is. Are you sure you want to see that? I'm not sure about anything anymore, I said. But I know I can't go on like this. Every time he smiles at me, I wonder if he's seeing a father or a paycheck. Ed agreed to help. Over the next 2 weeks, we put together a credible story, a retirement investment group that collapsed, taking my savings with it. We printed fake statements, filled out fake paperwork, made it look like a real disaster. I stopped taking Derek's calls for a while, let him stew, let him wonder. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I called him. "Derek," I said, my voice trembling the way I'd practiced, "I need to tell you something. I made a terrible mistake. I lost everything. The investments, the retirement fund, it's gone. All of it." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end. "What were you talking about?" "I trusted the wrong people. I thought I was being smart, putting it in that fund. But they went under. I'm left with the house and the pension, that's it. I can't even afford to keep up the Florida place anymore." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Dad, you're serious?" "I wish I weren't." He let out a breath, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. I expected sympathy. I expected the kind of "we'll get through this together" talk that you see in movies. What I got was worse than silenced. "So the money I was counting on, the inheritance, that's gone?" My hand tightened on the phone. "I never promised you an inheritance, Derek. You didn't have to. You always said I was your only son. You always said you were setting things up for me and the kids. What was I supposed to think?" I closed my eyes. "I'm telling you this because you're my son. I need you to know I'm in trouble. I might have to sell the house. I might have to move into something smaller." "Move where?" "I don't know yet. Maybe one of those senior apartments over on Maple." He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "You? In a senior apartment? With your back pain and your doctor appointments? Who's going to take care of you?" I figured maybe you and Sarah could help me out. Just for a little while. Until I figure things out. The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. "Dad, you know we can't. We've got our own bills, our own mortgage. The kids are in soccer, piano, summer camp. Sarah's been talking about a second car. I just can't take on another burden right now." I swallowed hard. "I'm not a burden, Derek. I'm your father. And I'm trying to build a life." His voice cracked with frustration. "You had your shot. You had your house, your retirement, your savings. You blew it. That's not my fault. I'm not going to pay for your mistakes." I didn't say another word. I hung up, and for a long time, I sat in my recliner, sta ring at the wall. I'd spent my whole life building a safety net for the people I loved. I'd worked double shifts at the plant. I'd skipped vacations. I'd driven the same truck for 20 years so Derek could have new shoes and good grades and a college degree. And now, when I was standing on the edge of a cliff, he wasn't even willing to hold the rope. The next week was a blur of refill acting. I called Derek a few more times, each time more desperate than the last. I told him I was looking at a studio apartment. I told him I was selling the family furniture. I told him I might have to stop the physical therapy for my knee. He never once asked how I was feeling. He never once said, "Dad, come stay with us." He only asked if there was any chance the investment would bounce back, or if I had any hidden accounts I'd forgotten about. I root to see the truth I'd been avoiding for years. Derek didn't love me. He loved what I could give him. He loved the safety net. He loved the promise of a comfortable future that he didn't have to work for. And now that the net was gone, so was he. I called Ed on a Friday morning. "It's working," I said, my voice hollow. "He's showing me exactly who he is." Ed sighed. "I was afraid of that." "Me too," I admitted. "But I had to know. I couldn't go to my grave wondering if my own son would cross the street to avoid me if I didn't have $1 in my pocket. I had one more test to run. One last way to see if there was any love left, buried under all that greed and resentment. I told Derek I was selling my house, the one I'd lived in for 40 years, and moving into a mobile home Pennsylvania RK on the outskirts of town. I told him I needed his help packing up the boxes, sorting through Margaret's old things. "I can't, Dad," he said immediately. "I've got a business trip next week. Maybe in a few months." "A few months might be too late," I said. Then hire someone. You've got the pension, right? Use that. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to shake him and say, I changed your diapers. I stayed up all night when you had pneumonia. I worked my fingers to the bone so you could stand on my shoulders and reach higher than I ever did. But I didn't. I just said okay and hung up. The phone didn't ring again for 3 weeks. I spent those weeks going through the motions of a man who'd lost everything. I stopped going to the golf course. I stopped meeting my old buddies for breakfast. I let my lawn grow a little wild. I wanted Derek to see me looking broken. I wanted him to see his father the way I was rooting to see him. As a stranger, I was sitting in the dark on a Thursday evening when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't in the mood for company. But I shuffled to the front door and opened it, and there stood Derek. He didn't look like my son. He looked like a man who'd been cornered, his eyes derooting, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Dad, he said, we need to talk. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked past me into the living room, scanning the half-packed boxes, the BA walls, the furniture I'd already marked for sale. You're really doing it, he said. You're really selling everything. I told you I was. He turned to face me, and for a split second, I thought I saw something soft in his expression. Something that might have been regret. But then he spoke, and I realized it was something else entirely. You can't sell the Florida house, Dad. Not without my signature. I frowned. What are you talking about? When Mom was sick, you put the house in both our names. You told me it was for tax purposes, remember? I'm on the deed. You can't sell it without my permission. The words hit me like a physical blow. I remembered now. Margaret had been in the hospital, and the lawyer had suggested it as a way to simplify things. I hadn't thought twice about it. Derek was my son. I trusted him. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice a whisper. I was going to, he said. But then you root talking about selling it, and I figured you'd change your mind. I figured you'd see reason. Reason, I repeated. You mean, you figure I'd give it to you? He had the decency to look away. I'm not trying to screw you over, Dad. I'm trying to protect my family. If you sell that house, I get nothing. And with the way things are going, I need something. I stood there in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life I'd built, and I felt something break inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something worse. It was resignation. I had raised a man who saw his father as an obstacle to his own survival. And nothing I could do would change that. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking, but I wouldn't let him see it. You want to talk about reasonable? I said. Here's reasonable. You can have the house, Derek. But only after I'm dead. Until then, it's mine. And I'll do whatever I want with it. His face went pale. You can't do that. I can. And I will. You want to contest it, go ahead. I'll see you in court. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. Now get out of my house. For a moment, I thought he'd fight me. But something in my voice must have told him I wasn't bluffing. He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I leaned against the kitchen counter and let out a long, slow breath. I'd lost my son. Not to death, not to distance, but to his own greed. And I'd lost him years ago. I'd just been too blind to see it. That night, I went to bed early. I lay in the darkness, ring at the ceiling, and I made a decision. The test wasn't over. It was just beginning. If Derek wanted the Florida house, he'd have to fight me for it. And I'd make sure he won. But on my terms. Not as I fell asleep with a plan forming in my mind. It was cold. It was calculated. And it was exactly what my son deserved. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind against the window like a whisper. I kept seeing Derek's face in the darkness, that cold, calculating look that had replaced the boy I used to know. By morning, I was hollow-eyed and running on fumes, but I had a CLA righty I hadn't felt in years. I called Ed Morrison before the sun was fully up. Change of plans, I said. I'm not done testing him. I need to go deeper. Ed was silent for a moment. I could hear him shuffling papers on his desk, the familiar sound of a man who'd spent 50 years dealing with complicated clients. Frank, I've known you a long time, he said finally. I've seen you through Margaret's illness, through your own health SCA through the kind of grief that breaks most men. But I've never seen you like this. You're not just angry. You're wounded. And wounded men make reckless decisions. I'm not being reckless, I said. I'm being careful. I need to know if there's anything left to salvage. If I just walk away now, I'll always wonder. I'll always think maybe I gave up too soon. What's the next step? I told him. He didn't like it. He told me it was risky, that I could be opening myself up to legal trouble, that Derek's behavior had already crossed a line and pushing further might make things worse. But I wasn't asking for his permission. I was asking for his help. He sighed the way he always did when he knew he wasn't going to win an argument. I'll draw up the papers. But I'm putting it on the record that I advised against this. Do what you have to do. The plan was simple, elegant, and cruel. I would offer Derek a way out, a legitimate, legal way to get his hands on the Florida house without waiting for me to die. But there would be a catch. A big one. He would have to buy me out at a price that was fair but not generous, and he would have to do it with his own money. No loans from me. No co-signing. No safety net. If he truly wanted the house, if it was about legacy and family and not just cashing in, he'd find a way. If it was about greed, he'd refuse and show his hand. I waited a week before I called him. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wonder what I was going to do next. I'd learned that from Margaret. She'd always said that letting people sit in their own discomfort was sometimes the kindest thing you could do for them. It gave them time to think. When I finally dialed his number, he answered on the first ring. Dad, don't sound so surprised. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Meet me at the bungalow. Saturday morning. Bring Sarah. We'll talk like adults. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost hear him weighing the risks. Fine, he said. But if this is another trick, Dad, I swear, it's not a trick. It's an opportunity. Take it or leave it. I hung up before he could respond. I spent the rest of the week getting the bungalow ready. I cleaned the windows, swept the porch, stocked the fridge with drinks and snacks. I wanted the place to look good. I wanted him to see what he was fighting for. They arrived at 10 o'clock on Saturday. Derek looked better than he had at the parque, clean-shaven, dressed in a polo shirt, trying hard to project confidence. Sarah was with him, quiet and watchful, her eyes scanning my face for clues about what was coming. Nice place, Derek said, looking around. You've kept it up well. Your mother would have wanted it that way. We sat on the porch, the three of us, with the sound of the ocean in the background. I'd made lemonade, the same kind Margaret used to make, and I poured glasses for all of us. I'm going to be direct, I said. Derek, you want this house. I know you do. And I've decided that I'm willing to let you have it. But I'm not giving it to you. I'm selling it to you. He set down his glass. Selling it. With what money? Your money. You've been running a business for 10 years, Derek. You've got assets. You've got equity in your own house. You can get a loan. You can sell some investments. I don't see how you do it, but if you want this house, you're going to pay for it. He laughed, that same ugly laugh I'd heard on the phone. You're insane. You know I don't have that kind of cash. You're setting me up to fail. I'm setting you up to prove something, I said. If this house means as much to you as you say it does, you'll find a way. If it's just about the money, you'll walk away. The choice is yours. Sarah shifted in her seat. Frank, can I ask you something? Of course. What happens if Derek can't come up with the money? What happens to the house then? I looked at her, this woman who'd been caught in the middle of a war she never asked to join. If he can't come up with the money, I said, I'll sell it to someone else. A stranger. A family. Someone who'll appreciate it the way Margaret and I did. And I'll put the proceeds in a trust for the grandkids. Nothing for Derek. Derek shot up from his chair. You can't do that. You can't just cut me out like that. I'm not cutting you out, I said calmly. I'm offering you a chance to step up. If you're the man I raised, you'll take it. If you're not, then we both know where we stand. He stood there, breathing hard, his hands shaking at his sides. I watched the war play out across his face, the greed fighting the pride, the entitlement fighting the fear. He wanted the house. He wanted it badly. But he didn't want to admit that he couldn't afford it. I'll need time, he said finally. A few weeks. To sort things out. Take all the time you need. But the offer expires in 30 days. After that, I move on to the next buyer. He nodded, grabbed his keys, and stormed off the porch. Sarah lingered for a moment, her eyes meeting mine. Thank you, she said quietly. For giving him a chance. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it for the kids. And for Margaret. She nodded and followed Derek to the yard. I watched them drive away, and I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd done what I could. The ball was in his court now. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I waited for Derek to call, to tell me he'd figured something out, to prove me wrong. But the phone stayed silent. I called Sarah a few times, just to check in, but she was vague and evasive. Something was happening behind the scenes, something I wasn't being told. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a notice of intent to contest my will. Derek was claiming that I was no longer of sound mind, that I was being manipulated by Ed Morrison, that I was unfit to manage my own affairs. He was asking the court to appoint a guardian to oversee my finances. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling a little more of my harden. He wasn't trying to meet my offer. He was trying to take everything, not just the house, not just the money, but my freedom. He wanted to paint me as a doddering old man who couldn't make his own decisions. I called Ed immediately. He's playing hardball, I said. I told you this was coming, Ed replied. He's not going to take your offer. He's going to try to take it all. Can he do that? Can he really have me declared incompetent? He can try. It'll be an uphill battle. You're 72, not 92. You're active, you're coherent, you've got a clean medical record. But he can make your life miserable. He can drag this through the courts for years. I sat down at my kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of me. I'd spent my whole life working, saving, planning for a future that would benefit my family. And now my only son was trying to burn it all down. What do? I asked. That you fight back, Ed said. You gather your doctors, your friends, your business associates. You show the court that you're perfectly capable of managing your own affairs. And then you let Derek dig his own grave. I spent the next few weeks doing exactly that. I gathered letters from my doctor, my neighbors, the guys I played golf with. I submitted evidence of my financial competence, of fully managed investments, timely tax payments, a clean credit history. I didn't hide anything. I had nothing to hide. The court hearing was set for a cold Monday in November. I walked into that courtroom with Ed by my side, my head held high. Derek was there too, with his lawyer, a young RK in an expensive suit who looked at me like I was a piece of meat. The judge was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She read through the evidence, listened to both sides, and asked me a few questions. Mr. Henderson, she said, you've heard the allegations against you. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood up straight and looked her in the eye. Your Honor, I said, I'm not senile. I'm not confused. I'm a man who was trying to teach his son a lesson about respect and gratitude. I made a mistake in the way I went about it, but I made that mistake with a clear mind and a full ERT. I love my son. But I won't let him take everything I've worked for just because he thinks he deserves it. The courtroom was silent. I saw Derek shift in his seat, his face flushed with anger or EMBA harassment. I couldn't tell which. The judge took a moment, then made her ruling. I find no evidence that Mr. Henderson is incompetent, she said. The petition for guardianship is denied. This case is dismissed with prejudice. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Ed patted me on the shoulder. Derek stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. I watched him go, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. I'd won the battle. But I'd lost the war. I went home that night and sat alone in my living room. I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built together, about the son we'd raised with so much hope. I wondered if she would have been proud of me or if she would have told me I was being too hard on him. I didn't have an answer. All I had was a hollow ache in my chest and the knowledge that my family was broken in ways I couldn't fix, but I wasn't done fighting. I wasn't done trying. There was still a chance, however small, that Derek would see the error of his ways. And I would be ready, with an open door and a generous ERT, if he ever decided to come home. Until then, I would keep living my life. I would keep drinking my coffee in the morning and watching the sunset at night. I would keep remembering Margaret, and I would keep hoping, because that's what fathers do. They hope. Even when hope feels like the most foolish thing in the world. The courtroom victory didn't feel like a victory. I walked out of that building with my head high and my ERT heavy, knowing I'd won a legal battle but lost something far more important. Derek hadn't spoken to me since the ring. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't even sent Ra as a messenger. The silence was absolute, and it told me everything I needed to know. I spent the next few weeks in a fog. I went through the motions of daily life, coffee in the morning, a walk around the block, dinner alone in front of the television, but nothing felt real. I kept replaying the courtroom scene in my head, the look on Derek's face when the judge ruled against him. There was no regret in his eyes. No shame. Just cold, hard anger. Ed called me every few days to check in. How are you holding up? Fine, I lied. I'm fine. You're not fine. I've known you too long to believe that. I'll get through it. I always do. But I wasn't sure I would. Not this time. This wasn't a health SCA or a financial setback. This was my son, the boy I'd raised, treating me like an enemy. And I didn't know how to come back from that. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me shuffle to the door and peer through the peephole. It was Ra. Alone. She was soaking wet, her hair plastered to her face, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door. Ra, what happened? She stepped inside without asking permission, her eyes rooting around the living room like she was checking for eavesdroppers. I need to talk to you, Frank. It's important. About what? She took a deep breath, and I saw her hands trembling. Derek doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm at the grocery store. But I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I had to tell someone. Tell me what? She sat down on my couch, and I sat across from her, my ERT pounding in my chest. Whatever she was about to say, it wasn't good. I could see it in the way she held herself, the tension in her shoulders, the fear in her eyes. It's the business, she said. It's worse than you know. Derek's been borrowing money from everyone, friends, clients, even some people EBA rely knows. He told them all the same story. That you were old and sick and he was going to inherit everything soon. That he'd pay them back with interest once the money came through. I felt my stomach drop. How much? I don't know the exact number. But it's a lot, Frank. Hundreds of thousands. Maybe more. And now that the court case is over, everyone knows he's not getting anything. They're coming after him. Some of them are talking about lawsuits. Some of them are threatening to show up at our house. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what she was telling me. I'd known Derek was greedy. I'd known he was entitled. But this was something else entirely. This was fraud. This was criminal. Has he been arrested? I asked. Not yet. But it's only a matter of time. He's been hiding at home, rely eating, rely sleeping. He's SCA red, Frank. He's really SCA red. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt that cold satisfaction of watching a man reap what he'd sown. But all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. This was my son. My only son. And he was destroying himself. Why are you telling me this? I asked. You know I can't help him. Not with money. I'm not asking you to help him with money, she said. I'm asking you to help him with something else. I'm asking you to talk to him. To see him. To remind him that he's still your son, even after everything. I shook my head. I don't know if I can do that, Ra. He's done too much. He's hurt me too deeply. I know, she said softly. I know he has. But he's still the father of my children. He's still the man I'm alright. And I can't watch him fall apart without trying to save him. I looked at this woman, this brave, tired woman who'd been caught in the crossfire of a war she never wanted to be part of. She'd married Derek for love, and she'd been dragged into his schemes, his lies, his endless greed. And she was still standing by him. That took courage. More courage than I'd shown in a long time. Let me think about it, I said. She nodded, stood up, and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back to me. Thank you, Frank. For listening. And for not hating me. I could never hate you, Ra. You're the best thing that ever happened to him. She smiled, a small, sad smile, and walked out into the rain. I sat in my living room for a long time after she left, staring at the empty space where she'd been. I thought about everything she'd told me, the debts, the lies, the fear. I thought about Derek, hiding in his house, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I thought about Margaret. She'd always been the one to soften me, to remind me that family was worth fighting for, even when it felt like the fight would break you. You would have already gone to him, I said out loud, as if she could hear me. You would have already knocked on his door and told him everything was going to be okay. But I wasn't Margaret. I was just a tired old man who'd been hurt too many times. The next morning, I woke up with a decision. I wasn't going to rescue Derek. I wasn't going to bail him out or pay off his debts or fix his mistakes. But I was going to see him. I was going to look him in the eye and have the conversation we should have had years ago. I drove to his house on a Thursday afternoon. The house looked the same as it always had, neat lawn, trimmed hedges, a children's bike lying in the driveway. But something felt different. There was a weight in the air, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, righter this time. I know you're in there, Derek. Open the door. A long pause. Then the door cracked open, and I saw my son's face peeking through. He looked terrible, gaunt, unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. What do you want to talk? That's all. Just to talk. He hesitated, then opened the door wider and let me in. The house was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, mail scattered across the table, the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. This wasn't the home of a man who had everything under control. This was the home of a man who was drowning. We sat in the living room, the same living room where I watched my grandchildren open Christmas presents, where I'd shared dinners with Ra and Derek and felt like I was part of a real family. Now it felt like a stranger's house. Ra told me about the debts, I said. He flinched. Of course she did. She tells you everything. She's worried about you. So am I. Since when? Since you root faking a financial crisis to test me, since you stood up in court and humiliated me. I took a deep breath. I didn't humiliate you, Derek. You humiliated yourself. You were the one who tried to have me declare red incompetent. You were the one who lied to your clients and your friends. You were the one who built a house of cards and then got surprised when it collapsed. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't know what else to do. I was in over my head. I thought if I could just get my hands on some of the money ROI, I could fix everything. But then USTA root playing games, and everything fell apart. I wasn't playing games, I said. I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to figure out if my son loved me or just my money. And I got my answer. He looked up at me, and I saw TRS in his eyes. Real TRS, not the fake ones he used to squeeze out of his mother when he was a kid. I'm sorry, he said. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I've done terrible things. But I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I sat there, looking at my son, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something close. Sorry isn't enough, Derek. You have to fix this. Not for me. For yourself. For Sarah. For the kids. How do I fix something this broken? I leaned four-way road USTART by telling the truth. Everywhere. To everyone. You admit what you did, you apologize, and USTART making amends. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But it's the only way. He read at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You want me to confess to everyone, admit that I lied and cheated and stole? Yes. They'll hate me. They'll sue me. I'll lose everything. Maybe. But you'll have your integrity. And that's worth more than anything you could lose. He was silent for a long time. I watched his face, watched the battle play out behind his eyes. He wanted to fight me. He wanted to argue, to find a loophole, to avoid the hard work of redemption, but something must have clicked, because his shoulders sagged, and he nodded. Okay, he said. I'll do it. I don't know if I can, but I'll try. I stood up and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back to him. I'm not promising anything, Derek. I'm not saying everything will be forgiven. But I'll be here. I'll be your father. That's what I'm supposed to do. He nodded, unable to speak. I drove home that night with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was something quieter, something softer. Hope that the next few weeks were chaotic. Derek did what I'd asked. He root making calls, writing letters, admitting what he'd done. Some people accepted his apology. Others didn't. He lost clients, lost friends, lost the respect of people he'd known for years. It was brutal, and I watched from a distance, not intervening, not rescuing. But something else happened, something I hadn't expected. Slowly, painfully, Derek root to change. He root showing up at family dinners. He root helping around the house. He root asking about my day, my health, my feelings. It was awkward at first. The conversations were stilted, the silences uncomfortable. But little by little, we root to find our way back to each other. One evening, he called me out of the blue. No agenda. No request. Just a phone call to say hello. Hey, Dad. How are you doing? I smiled for the first time in months. I'm doing okay, son. I'm doing okay. I was thinking about Mom today, he said. Remember how she used to make that apple pie for Thanksgiving, the one with the crumb topping? I remember. I've been trying to make it myself, but it never comes out right. I think she took the recipe with her. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep in my chest. She did. That was her secret. She never wrote it down. Typical Mom, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. It wasn't a perfect conversation. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. But it was a start, and sometimes, that's enough. Spring came slow but it came. I watched the daffodils push through the cold ground in my front yard, and I thought about how long it had been since I'd felt anything like warmth in my chest. The phone calls with Derek had become a regular thing. Every Sunday evening, right around 6, he'd call. Sometimes we talked for an hour. Sometimes just 10 minutes. But he called. That was the important part. He was still digging himself out of the hole he'd created. The lawsuits were ongoing. Some of the creditors had settled for pennies on the dollar. Others were taking him to court. He'd had to sell his car, take a second job at a hardwa restore on weekends, and cut back on just about everything. Sa had gone back to work full-time, and the kids were doing more chores than any 10-year-old should have to do, but they were surviving. And more than that, they were healing. I saw it in the way Derek talked about his family now. There was a humility in his voice that hadn't been there before. He talked about Sa with genuine gratitude, not just as a prop in his life but as a partner who'd stuck by him when she had every reason to leave. He talked about the kids with a new tenderness, like he was finally seeing them as people instead of accessories. I didn't trust it completely. I'd been burned too many times. But I was willing to let myself hope, just a little. The turning point came on a Saturday in late April. Derek called me and asked if he could come over. Alone. He said he had something important to discuss. I told him to come anytime. He showed up 2 hours later with a Sierra Road box in his hands. He looked tired but clear-eyed, the kind of tired that comes from honest work. Dad, I brought you something. He set the box on my kitchen table and opened the flaps. Inside were a collection of old photo albums, letters, and trinkets, things I hadn't seen in years. These were in my attic, he said. I found them when I was cleaning out some old boxes. I thought you might want them back. I reached into the box and pulled out a photo album. It was from Derek's childhood, birthday parties, school plays, family vacations. I opened it to a page with a picture of Derek and me at the lake, both of us holding up a string of fish. He couldn't have been more than 12. We were both grinning like idiots. I remember that trip, I said. You caught the biggest one. You wouldn't stop talking about it for weeks. I was so proud of that fish, he said, smiling. I didn't see that you'd caught twice as many. All I read about was that one. I flipped through more pages. Christmas mornings. First day of school. Graduation. Each picture was a reminder of a time when things were simpler, when love was unconditional and money was just something that bought groceries. Why are you giving me these? I asked. He sat down across from me, his hands folded on the table. Because I realized something, Dad. I've spent so much time chasing things that don't matter, money, status, the next big deal. And I forgot about the things that do. I forgot about you. I forgot about Mom. I forgot about what it meant to be a family. I set the album down and looked at him. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. He was just open. Raw. Vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him before. I know I can't undo what I did, he continued. I know I hurt you. I lied to you. I tried to take from you. I tried to have you declare red incompetent. There's no excuse for any of it. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to be the son you deserved. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just sat there, looking at my son, feeling the weight of everything that had happened between us. Derek, I said finally, do you know why I did what I did? The test, the faking, because you didn't trust me. Because I loved you, I corrected. And I was terrified that you didn't love me back. I was terrified that I'd spent my whole life building a relationship with a man who only saw me as a means to an end. He flinched. I know. And I hate that I made you feel that way. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, I said. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. Love isn't about money, Derek. It's about showing up. It's about being there, even when it's hard road. It's about looking at someone and seeing a person, not a paycheck. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm learning that. It's taking me a long time, but I'm learning. We talked for another hour, about everything and nothing. He told me about the hardwa restore job, about how it felt to do honest work for honest pay. He told me about the kids, about CLA Ra's science fair project and Jacob's baseball game. He told me about S.A. Ra, about how she'd forgiven him even when he didn't deserve it, and I told him about Marga Ret. I told him about the EARLYERS of our mariage, when we were so broke we couldn't afford a Christmas tree. I told him about the night she got sick, about the fear and the anger and the helplessness. I told him about the last conversation we ever had, when she made me promise to take care of myself and not let the grief swallow me whole. I didn't keep that promise, I admitted. After she died, I shut down. I buried myself in work and routine and pretending everything was fine. And when you root asking for money, I let that become our whole relationship. I should have talked to you. I should have told you how I was feeling. Dad, you don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. I'm your father. I should have done better. I should have been more honest with you. I should have set boundaries instead of building walls. He reached across the table and put his hand on mine. It was the first time he touched me affectionately in years. We both made mistakes, he said. But we're still here. We're still talking. That's gotta count for something. I nodded, unable to speak. The TRS I'd been holding back finally spilled over. We sat there for a long time, father and son, two broken men trying to find their way back to each other. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Over the next few months, our relationship continued to heal. Derek sta root coming to Sunday dinners at my house, just like he used to when he was younger. Sometimes S.A. Ra and the kids came too, and we'd sit around the table and eat and talk and laugh. It wasn't the same as before. It was better. Because now there was honesty underneath it all. I sta root going to his house for the holidays. I watched Clara and Jacob open presents and remembered when Derek was their age. I watched S.A. Ra laugh at something Derek said and saw the love in her eyes. I watched my son become the man I'd always hoped he'd be. And somewhere along the way, I let go of the anger. Not all of it. Some of it was still there, a scar on my heart that would never fully heal. But I let go of the need to punish him, the need to make him suffer for the pain he'd caused me. I realized that holding on to that anger was like holding on to a hot coal. It was burning me far more than it was burning him. One night, after a particularly good dinner, Derek pulled me aside. Dad, I want to ask you something. And you can say no. I'll understand if you do. Ask me anything. I've been thinking about the Florida house. I know I tried to take it from you. I know I did terrible things to try to get it. But I want to ask you something different this time. I braced myself. Would I want to buy it? Legitimately. I've been saving money from the HRDWA restore job. It's not a lot, but it's honest. I've got about $15,000 set aside. I know that's not any ROI enough, but I was thinking, maybe you'd let me make payments. Like a mortgage. Slow and steady. And when it's paid off, I'd want to take the kids there. Show them the beach. Show them where their grandmother used to sit and watch the sunsets. I read at him, completely stunned. This wasn't the Derek I'd known. The old Derek would have tried to manipulate me into giving it to him for free. The old Derek would have made promises he had no intention of keeping. But this Derek was different. This Derek was offering to work for it. Are you serious? I asked. Dead serious. I want the AR in it, Dad. I want to prove that I can be responsible. That I can take care of something that matters. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about Marga Ret, about how much she'd love that little bungalow. I thought about Derek as a boy, running along the shoreline, collecting shells for his mother. I thought about Clara and Jacob, about the memories they could make there. How about this? I said. I'll sell it to you for what I paid for it in 1985. $28,000. That's it. No interest. No hidden fees. You make payments when you can, and when it's paid off, it's yours. His jaw dropped. Dad, that's not even a tenth of what it's worth. I know. But it's not about the money. It's about trust. And I think we're finally getting there. He pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug I'd been craving for years, tight and warm and full of everything words couldn't say. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for giving me another chance. You rented it, I said. You rented every bit of it. We spent the rest of the evening making plans. I told him about the leaky roof and the creaky floorboards. He told me about his ideas for fixing them up. We talked about summer vacations and fishing trips and all the things we wanted to do together, and as I watched him walk out the door that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I didn't know what the future would bring. I didn't know if Derek would stay on this path or if he'd fall back into his old ways. But I knew one thing for sure, I'd gotten my son back. Not the idea of him. Not the memory of him. The real him. Flawed and struggling and trying his best. And that was more than I'd ever dared to hope for. The year rolled on, and life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known I was missing. Sunday dinners became sacred. Derek and I root going fishing together again, just like when he was a kid. We didn't catch much, but that wasn't the point. The point was the quiet, the company, the simple act of being together. I watched him change in ways that made my chest swell with a pride I thought I'd lost forever. He stopped checking his phone during our conversations. He root asking about my health, my doctor's appointments, my bad knee. He remembered my birthday for the first time in 5 years, not because Ra reminded him, but because he'd written it on his own calendar. Small things, but they added up to something big. He was becoming the man I'd always believed he could be. And I was finally allowing myself to believe it too. The Florida house deal went through without a hitch. I drew up a simple contract with Ed, no lawyers on Derek's side needed, just a handshake and a payment plan. He made his first payment on time, a check for $500 that he handed me with a nervous smile. First of many, he said, I believe you. He came to the bungalow with me that summer, just the two of us. We spent a week fixing the place up, new paint on the porch, fresh caulk around the windows, a coat of sealant on the deck. We worked side by side, sweating in the Florida heat, and we talked about everything and nothing. I remember when Mom used to sit right here, he said, pointing to a spot on the porch where the paint was worn thin. She'd have her coffee in the morning and watch the sun come up. She did that every single day, I said. Didn't matter if it was raining or sunny or if she was feeling sick. She'd sit here and watch the day begin. I miss her, he said quietly. Me too. Every single day. We sat on the porch that evening, drinking cheap beer and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the kind of moment I'd thought I'd never have again. The kind of moment that made all the pain worth it. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything? When you faked losing everything, what were you hoping would happen? What were you looking for? I took a long sip of my beer, thinking about how to answer. I was looking for proof, I said finally. Proof that you loved me. Not my money, not my house, not what I could give you. Just me. I wanted to know that if I had nothing left to offer, you'd still want me in your life. He nodded slowly. And when I failed that test, what did you feel? Hurt? Betrayed? But mostly, I felt like I'd failed you. Like somewhere along the way, I'd done something wrong. I'd raised a son who didn't know how to love without a price tag attached. He set his beer down and turned to face me. You didn't fail me, Dad. I failed myself. I got caught up in the chase, the money, the status, the idea that I was entitled to something I hadn't earned. And I forgot that the only thing that really mattered was sitting right in front of me. I felt my throat tighten. Derek, I don't need you to say these things. I already know. I'm not saying them for you, he interrupted. I'm saying them for me. I need to hear myself say them out loud. I need to remember what I almost lost. We sat in silence for a while, watching the stars come out one by one. I'm proud of you, I said eventually. I know I don't say it enough. But I am. You've come a long way. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know. The next morning, we went to the beach. I hadn't been in the water for years. My knees couldn't handle the waves anymore, but I sat on the sand and watched Derek wade into the surf. He looked like a kid again, splashing around, laughing at nothing. I thought about Margaret, about how she'd always said that the best things in life were the simplest ones. She was right. She was always right. When we got back home, I made a decision. I called Ed and told him I wanted to rewrite my will one more time. Are you sure? Ed asked. After everything that happened, I'm sure. I'm not leaving everything to Derek. I'm not going to hand him a pile of cash and hope he doesn't blow it. But I want to make sure he's taken care of. I want to make sure the grandkids are taken care of. I want to make sure that if something happens to me, he doesn't have to go through what he went through before. Ed listened patiently. What did you have in mind? I want to set up a trust. Not for Derek, but for the family. The bungalow goes to him, but with stipulations. He has to keep it in the family. He can't sell it for at least 10 years. The rest of my assets get split between the grandkids' education and a few charities I care about. And Derek gets a smaller amount, enough to help him get by, but not enough to go wild with. That's a solid plan, Ed said. Very measured. Very smart. It's taken me a long time to get here, I admitted. But I think I finally understand what matters. I signed the new will on a Friday afternoon, surrounded by the quiet hum of Ed's office. It felt right. It felt like closure. The weeks turned into months, and life continued to heal. Derek made his house payments on time, every time. He root a small side business repairing furniture, using the skills he'd learned at the hardware store. It wasn't making him rich, but it was making him happy. He'd found something he was good at, something that didn't require him to bend the truth or cut corners. Sarah and I grew closer. She root coming to my house for coffee on Saturday mornings, just the two of us. We'd talk about the kids, about Derek, about the future. She told me things she'd never told anyone, about her fears during the worst of it, about the nights she'd lain awake wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake marrying my son. He's not the same man I married, she said one morning. But he's becoming someone I'm proud to be married to. And I think that's even better. I agreed. Change was hard, growth was painful. But it was worth it. The holidays came, and for the first time in years, we spent them together. Christmas at Derek's house, with the tree and the presents and the chaos of kids tearing open wrapping paper. I sat in the corner and watched it all, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the fireplace. This is nice, I said to Derek, who'd come to sit beside me. It's perfect, he agreed. It's everything I used to take for granted. We both did. But we're here now. That's what matters. He put his hand on my shoulder. Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad. I know I didn't deserve it. Maybe not, I said. But that's what family does. We don't give up on each other. Even when we should. Even when it's hard. He nodded, his eyes glistening. I love you, Dad. It was the first time he'd said it in years. The first time I truly believed it. I love you too, son. More than you'll ever know. The next spring, Derek brought the whole family down to the Florida bungalow. Clara and Jacob ran along the beach, collecting shells and building sandcastles. Sarah sat on the porch with a book, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. And Derek stood on the deck, staring out at the ocean. I walked up beside him. Looks like you got your wish, I said. What wish? The one you told me about. The kids on the beach. The family together. This place finally feeling like home. He smiled. It does feel like home. Not because of the house. Because of who's in it. I put my arm around his shoulders. That's the rudest thing you've ever said. We stood there for a long time, father and son, watching the waves roll in. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was the kind of moment that made everything else fade away. I thought about the journey we'd been on, the lies and the hurt, the anger and the betrayal. I thought about the test I'd put him through, the way I'd forced him to show his true colors. And I thought about how, in the end, those true colors had turned out to be more beautiful than I'd ever expected. It hadn't been easy. It had been messy and painful and full of hard conversations. But we'd made it through. Together. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance. Not the money. Not the house. Not the things I could leave behind. It was the love. The love that had survived the worst of us and come out the other side stronger. I looked at Derek, at the son I'd almost lost, and I smiled. You know, I think your mother would be proud of us. He turned to me, his eyes wet. You think so? I know so. She always believed in second chances. She always believed in us. We stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I felt a peace settle over me, a deep and quiet peace that I'd been searching for my whole life. I'd found it. Not in a bank account or a will or a piece of property. I'd found it in the simple, complicated, beautiful act of forgiveness, and that was worth more than all the money in the world.